So 2 minutes, 1 minute, whenever you're ready, we can go.
We can jump on earlier if you want to. I feel like we just they're seeing what right now? If you're waiting, what are you waiting for?
They see, please wait for the host to start this webinar.
Oh, then let's do that one. Let's get them started. Once again, here we are.
Damn, we've been 1 minute early like 3 weeks in a row.
It must be this amazing team we have starting this thing off here.
I think so. I think the production crew is on top of it today.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I trust this production crew.
Oh, yeah.
I see familiar names popping in here. Ryan Summers. I think Ryan Summers owes me a phone call because we have to catch up. It's been a while. This is a fun topic today. I mean, I feel like so many times we have this in the back of our head when we're talking to clients and giving answers. So it's fun to sometimes grab these really big topics and do something with it. Oh, there he is. Hey, Ryan.
How's it going?
Dude, I miss you. Very good.
I know. I feel like we have a lot to talk about. The world's been moving so fast, hasn't
it? Yeah. I think you got busy all of a sudden. So.
Yeah, dude, yeah. Yeah, I was definitely, if I felt rusty a few weeks ago, I don't anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we got to catch up. I got to hear the stories.
Yes, we got them.
All right. I think we should start to the top of the hour. Got people playing, kind of rolling in here and getting things started. Like I said, Emmett, I think this is a fun topic because so many people that we talk to, and we have a reference of the information we give clients or people that are reaching out to us, emails that we get or whatever. And some of that major thing we draw on, that reserve, comes from this idea of the seasons of a creative firm. So it's good to get this off our chest every once in a while and just talk through what are these seasons and how do they work.
Yeah, I know. I feel like this is such a great roadmap or like a vision for where studios can go or where owners can go. And I think sometimes we can get lost in the details or we forget the big picture.
Yeah. The big picture really, the kind of like the idea of building your future and understanding where you end up. You have to know, on your journey where the mountain ranges are, where the rivers are, and where the deserts are, so you can kind of get through it more easily.
Right.
Let's turn off the screen sharing for now, and then I'll just welcome people. This is the weekly briefing with RevThink. I'm Tim Thompson, and this is Emmett Armstrong, one of these people over here. Emmett and I, we sit down every week and we discuss the topics that we're working on, the information that we get from our clients, or even just some big questions that are sitting out there that honestly sometimes takes us some time and we have to do our own homework, get our legs underneath us before we start answering the question. But this week is not that. This week, I think we've kind of just said, let's take it easy and talk about something we know. I can't remember how we got to this topic.
No, it was, we need to talk about this because it's so important and we don't always bring it to people's minds.
Yeah, that's what it is. Because we were realizing that there are things that we're making the assumption that people just know this, right, because it's so familiar to us, but we often don't get it out and make it as common for other people as knowledge as it is for ourselves. So. Exactly. So let's get into it a little bit. Today is August 25th, and we're starting this things off. The seasons of a creative firm really came from a workshop that we did years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And it was like a 3 or 4 day time period that all of us Rev thinkers, I think Joel had just started working with us, and we were trying to explain, what do we do and how does it work and what are the problems we solve? And when we started that mind map of all the issues that we solve and then categorizing them, we discovered the 7 ingredients, which are the 7 primary areas of business that each person has to master. But then when thinking about that further, we realized you don't master them all at one time. They often roll out or roll up to build a business. And we started identifying these patterns of business growth that we call the seasons of a creative firm, and how these ingredients kind of stack in and formulate those seasons, and we'll say like the maturity through those seasons. So that's the origin of it, is recognizing that there was first 7 ingredients, which are creative, production, sales, finance, marketing, operations, and entrepreneurialism, the big picture leadership role. And then those 7, where they fall within the growth of your business, which items you master first and what comes later. And specifically, one primary season growth where you have to master multiple ingredients at the same time, which often holds people back and creates crisis, which honestly is probably the first phone call we get when somebody feels that stuck and they want to know what comes next. How do I get there?
Right. Yeah. Do you mind if I bring up that graphic? I feel like it's so much easier to visualize.
Yeah, if you have it, let's throw it up there.
How's that?
Yeah, this is great. We've used different terms for this throughout the years. So some of you might remember the punch and pull and push and whatever seasons we had there. Power, is that one of them? Yeah. But these are the ingredients themselves, right? Entrepreneurial and creative is really, most creative businesses start with this. There's a creative person, they want to start a business, boom, you get that. And it's not soon after that they find somebody that does the production side of it. So that first business is a creative production environment, and that business is growing. That's a business, if you have run or are running right now $1 million to $1.5 million business, or less than that, less than $1 million, you're probably in that phase right now, just keeping up with the work. And that's what it feels like. You get a job, you produce it, you get it out the door. It's the next stage that says, how do I get out of this work-based process? And many people want to solve it with sales, saying, hey, I have these, when I'm busy with work, I don't do sales, and then I crash and think, oh my goodness, I'll never know another sales again. And that feast and famine roller coaster is what they want to solve. But the struggle is, and most people want to solve the problem with sales, but there really is a growth element to it. And that's why the finance ingredient has to be attached to that. The finance ingredient, or in our case, what we use is the factors method, allows for that future projection. Where are you going to go? And then how do we finance that growth? And that way, when sales comes in, we can calculate what the sales needs are, how to use the revenue coming from sales, and how to start generating growth within the company. So those 2 items come together. If you do sales without finance, you can just generate a whole lot more work, but you haven't actually tackled the corporate problems of growing your business strategically and getting basically a more mature or more seasoned business. So that emerging to thriving threshold really is a trap for a lot of creative business owners. And they're looking for a direction of, how do I get past that gap between the 2? And then, as you can see, as the business matures, there are other ingredients we add later, like marketing, which is really forward projection from sales and allows us to create our positioning, accuracy, qualifying clients, that does better outreach for us, generates leads through our sales pipeline, and then as well as kind of sets the tempo and sets the direction for the creative business, the kind of work we want to do, clients we want to work with. That outreach and qualifying people is so important to becoming that big, more mature business. So marketing helps feed that pipeline later as you master the sales and finance ingredients. And then operations is this machine running the machine idea, where the operations of the business run the business more than individuals that were running the business. And clearly you have to have some operational need before you master operations, but really operations along the way is always there. It's just the mortar between the bricks. It's one person emails this person to say we have a job, and then they put this on a drive, and so on, is how it starts. Little big picture items are, how do we systematize these in a way that we can master it?
So it doesn't get lost in someone's inbox and never seen again. Yeah.
Or you hire for the job, not the person, so that when you're hiring your head of marketing, it's a position you're hiring for. And if one person leaves, another person can fill in very easily because your operations and systems are in place.
Mm-hmm. So Tim, when I see this graphic, I have a couple questions right away, or I imagine I've seen this before, but right away we see the beginning is the launch, and then the end of the graph is the exit. My question is, do you have dollar amounts associated with each stage, or is it more about something else? Like, do you have to be 20 million and then you exit, or what's the path there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the launch to exit approach that we have at the bottom is this idea of turning your business from a job into an asset. So that exit doesn't actually mean close the door behind you kind of exit. It's just the thought process of, an operation that runs its own operation means that this self-managed entity turns into an asset that allows you some more independence or greater control over what that company is doing, so you can actually go after more aggressively, go after certain clients and always achieve that goal. So it doesn't have to always be an acquisition or a merger, but it definitely can be. When it comes to dollar amounts, there's definitely dollar relationships with each of these seasons, but often the dollar and number of people and type of project are all kind of together. Growth happens that way, where when you have money, you're getting more revenue, you invest it back in your business in certain key employees. Those key employees generate new revenue and it comes back to the business, and the two grow together. So there's a relevant nature to dollar and growth, but you definitely don't have to be. I think of one client I worked with many years ago, who I'd say is definitely on the thriving, mature threshold, very easily. But they really only had eight employees. They were able to do $11 million worth of work with those 8 employees. So they figured out their own kind of production method to get there. So it's not a headcount alone, but also I know plenty of companies that are actually exiting their business revenue at 3 million. So it's not 20 million. You can exit your business at 3 million, sell that off or acquire or be acquired, whatever those exit strategies are when that time comes in your career. So there are definitely some elements that work together. And if you are working in certain strategies, you definitely want to consider that, but it's not pinpointed dollar, person, and season.
Right. Yeah. And we use the term mastery. So we talk about mastering the 7 ingredients, but even at the very beginning, you mentioned all the ingredients in order, and then you put entrepreneurial ingredient at the end. But it's also kind of at the beginning, because you have to be an entrepreneur to start the business. But then by the time you master being an entrepreneur, you've mastered all of the other ingredients. So it's like the beginning and the end. And operations, you're always doing some operations. So how does that work? Do you only focus on these first 2 ingredients in the first stage and then production in the emerging stage?
No, I think most businesses already kind of know how to do the first stage or 2 by themselves. A lot of businesses that we work with come out of a few individuals that got a job from a client, grabbed freelancers that they knew, and they put that production team together. So I often feel like the entrepreneurial desire, and then a creative project, and then the need to produce that creative project really happens, all together somewhat.
It's like a spark.
It is. And what we're talking about here is the idea of mastery is something of, if you're going to be successful in a creative business, I'll just say, if you're not successful in creative business, you're not one of our clients, so we don't know who you are. But if you're going to be successful in creative business, you have to know that anytime given a creative challenge, you can deliver and get the job done. So there is some kind of mechanism and method that you already know as a creative person, that you're delivering consistent creative work, good creative work. And it's being produced by a producer. The production ingredient asks another bigger question. How do we also systematically, methodically build a system that we can always produce it on time, on budget, and have that client be happy? So beyond just, can I talk to somebody and write emails and build the client, which is young entrepreneurial, just getting stuff out the door, to mastering the production element, means that if the company were to grow, there's a method around it that if I added twice as many projects, which is what sales is going to generate for me, I can handle it production-wise. Right. And that's why we want you to kind of think, and why this is often a point of struggle, is that we're looking for that next big hit, but sometimes our production isn't in place. So even when given a chance, the production team gets tense or bogged up and you can't go generate 3 new projects. So one big project actually slows the whole company growth down because it's bogged down by one project, opposed to saying, oh, one big project, 7 little projects, we can keep on going. And that salesperson and sales team that wants to generate revenue for you has to know you can get the job done. So that's why those first ingredients often come together as a package, but need a little bit of fine tuning that advances them to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like there's things that you're focusing on in each stage, but then there's this gap between the stages. So can you talk a little bit about each of those gaps and what makes each of those gaps unique and difficult and what challenges people face at each stage?
Yeah, it's funny how it always turns out to be a gap when we draw these graphs, but I think that mentally it feels that way. I feel like you have to want to be like Evel Knievel and jump over this sucker to get to the other side, because it does take some daring effort to figure out how to make the next thing happen. What I've learned is it's actually not decision making. So it's not intelligence that helps people get from one season to the other, but it's actually the speed at which you can make certain decisions. So a familiarity of the decisions you want to make, which should come from some direction from you as a business owner. And then knowing systematically when to make each decision helps really get from one side of the gap to the other. So here's an example, right? I can say, I'll go back to the sales example again. I could say I really want to generate more sales within my business. So I do a very common move. I hire a sales rep and I ask that sales rep, please represent us to this gigantic field and find us more clients for our business. And let's take my bias from reps aside for a minute. Let's imagine they actually are doing hard work and are trying to find you work that would be relevant. That's the key part, relevant for your business. As that work comes in, your production team has to start processing through, hey, what is the bidding like? What's this team going to look like? How do I get growth? Who would do the job? Can my creative directors handle it? And then all of a sudden you realize, wait, if I'm going to grow my business, how do I know I'm profitable? And then now I'm stacked up against this finance problem where I could be accepting all this new work, but it might or might not be profitable. So just saying yes to new work and new clients because the salesperson gave it to you doesn't guarantee you success. It can actually crash your business. And many of my first clients when I started RevThink were in that exact situation. They were getting workload, but they were going upside down with finances and running to their line of credit and their American Express cards to keep their business financed. So to me, like that gap really is knowing, hey, what comes first? How do we set up the sales team to be successful? How do we know the production team can handle it? And then how do we financially wrap that into package decision-making so that we can qualify projects, bring them in, divvy up the finances between direct and indirect, give the right people the right amount of money, give them all the responsibility, give them all the authority, let them hire the work, and let the work just trickle down our team to where that team can handle it. And I think that's the part of, if you're used to being a creative director, which a lot of business owners that we work are, or a producer, you're not thinking corporately, systematically of one decision leads to the next and leads to the next and leads to the next. And that's the tipping point of, jumping from one season to the next, is knowing that gap and that knowledge gap that you have to figure out that routine to get there.
Yeah, I know this gap from emerging to thriving seems to be the most common that we encounter, because you almost have, we've said this before, but it's like you have to jump out of the plane and then build the parachute on the way down, or you have to jump before you know exactly where you're going to land. And practically what that means is that you have to spend money before you know where the next job is going to come from, because you're hiring the people to do the production work or do the sales work. And those people can get expensive. And if you're just a small firm, your first big creative director is a pretty big chunk of your revenue, or your first salesperson. All of a sudden, that's money that you're not taking home as an owner. And it's scary.
It's so scary because you feel like, you just said it, right? You feel like if I give it to you, it takes it away from me. And that scarcity thinking of there's only finite money and I'm giving you a piece of the finite value, that's where a lot of people stop themselves from doing it. With abundance thinking, you realize, no, I'm going to give you money and then it will multiply on the other side. But also that can't be wishful thinking. I hope when I give you money, hope that something's going to get returned. That's the struggle with some of the sales rep growth, is that if you want something, I have nothing really against sales reps, but I'm just saying that the desire to say like it's going to be solved outside our business without any qualifying or direction from inside is where a lot of the communication fails on that kind of growth.
Yeah.
And for us specifically, I think we see that transition the most because, the first season happens off our radar, really. Like we're not helping people go from freelance to business owners. That's not what we do at RevThink specifically. So that emerging to thriving is the first season. They'll probably recognize the things that we have, like the factors method or Joel's Jumpstart class, when it comes to positioning, are very relevant to them. It's too early, maybe, if you're too soon in your growth. But the later one, a $25 million, $30 million business, although I've worked with plenty of them, most of them have internal people. They solve the problem by hiring a head of marketing at that kind of revenue. So they don't come to us for positioning. They're not struggling with that moment of like, hey, how do I write a positioning statement? They have professionals. So I think we kind of deal with that the most. But what's interesting is how a lot of people you can hire when you're a mature business owner that might have relevant experience, when we're often brought in for direction. We're really working alongside the business owner, translating the desire into this more, a larger operational system. And those translation tools, and we'll say even like some of the systematic tools that we put in place, help that translation smooth out. So
exactly,
we can be up and down this entire scale, but I think the ones we find the most are the ones that are the emerging to thriving business owners.
And it's funny, the mature firms that we've interacted with, they've done all this work by themselves. So they've probably come to a lot of the same conclusions, but they had to figure it out with no one to help them.
Yeah.
No community, no advisors, just a school of hard knocks for 25 years.
Yeah, when I think about what I have the stages of the creative career, which is a totally different graph and totally different kind of dynamic way of recognizing and strategizing with business owners. But that question comes to ask the bigger question of like, why did you even start this business to begin with? And we ask that question early on with business owners, no matter what season you're in. We want to know that so we can work with you. Hey, where are we going? Why did we start this business? What's relevant about this business and how are we going to get there? And we joke about or have put in place the fame, fortune, and freedom kind of metrics of like the things that we believe business owners are inspired with, right? But that the bigger dynamic of where you want to go really helps you in that mature environment. And some people become very big, fast, even have been, tens of millions dollar business for decades and don't know how to get out of it. They don't know what next question to ask. And that's why those stages of a creative career help me sit down and say, well, where are you stuck? Did you not realize you're supposed to be using influence to get yourself out of this? Did you not realize promoting others is how it's not just promoting yourself, but promoting others is the foundation for these next decision making. And we can start working with the team and the business owners in that way.
Yeah. And our slogan here at RevThink is we help the creative owners succeed in business life and career. And this is just the business side, because one thing we also say is that the creative owner is what creates the creative business. So the business's personality is driven by the owner's personality, especially at a small size. And when we just talk about these ingredients, it does kind of maybe like this graph doesn't completely cover the motivations of the person that started the business. So I love that. And that's another thing that we care about at RevThink is the actual person that's sitting in the driver's seat, not just building the car around them.
Yeah. I mean, I like to remind people I'm a business owner too, right? So I'm processing and thinking about and have thought about, but I also know really well why I started my business. I know clearly who I was going after, why I wanted to serve them, how I absolutely desired to take on their problems to solve them, to have satisfaction for me. It's exciting for me to think about that. But I also, with that why, I now know, where I would start and where I would end, or how I'd want to grow, or what the kind of influence I want to have to get out of it. So I put that same cloak on that other business owners are putting on and saying, well, you started the business for a reason. Which one was it? Fame, fortune, or freedom, right? Like we kind of like pump them that way to say, like, let's name it and then know when we're going to achieve that goal.
Right. So zooming back into the ingredients a little bit, like what other things do we do here at RevThink? I know we have some master classes, but you said we don't cover every single thing all the time.
Well, yeah, I think operations might be the one of these ingredients that, we probably do more inside. If you're watching a webinar that we do, or the weekly briefing, or even our accelerator classes, operations isn't something we can often just solve with like, hey, here's a mini accelerator, take the operations course and you can run operations. Operations is like whack-a-mole. Like you're as soon as something pops up and you hit it down, it's going to pop up 4 more things. And you kind of have to get and understand the pattern so you can get that company into rhythm. So it's very personal, or very personality driven, based on the company of where you're going to go to know how to conquer some of those goals. And it's fun. One of the years ago, I think I was probably at ProMax, and I had a few of my clients at a party together, and they were joking because each one would call me a different title, CFO, CEO, interim CEO, interim COO, whatever that is. But no matter what, the C and the O were the same. The middle initial was separate. And I remember thinking like, I love this. This is really fun. But I think one of the greatest challenges for me is the COO, interim COO title, because it really puts a large burden of kind of owning that business with the business owner for a little while and figuring out how to get the business operations moving on behalf of and with a creative business owner. But I love it. It's like I have to kind of get into the middle and the meat of it. So whenever I'm doing that work, I think it's so fun. But that's probably why people don't see those ingredients as often as our sales, finance, production ingredients. Those are where most people are struggling in this season growth. And then, of course, marketing. Joel does a great job with the marketing positioning elements, moving people to think bigger beyond just a thriving business. But there are entrepreneurial. We always talk about entrepreneurial. It's the bow that wraps the seasons more than it is like just one. You have to do it one time. No, you're always an entrepreneur.
I like how you said the mortar between the bricks. I guess operations and entrepreneurialism are both in some ways between every other ingredient.
Yeah, it's entrenched, isn't it? Like when someone signs up to work for your business, they believe in you and your business and the things you're going to accomplish together. That's the exciting part of being the business owner and the entrepreneur. And that's the challenge that we're up against. But so that starts it, and that kind of, is what they're soaked in. But you always have to be thinking about and improving and growing and asking when it's too much. When is your limit? When have you hit your limit? And when does somebody else need to come in to fill in that gap for your business and for yourself? And that life element too is very much driven in that way. Like I believe we have a calling, and these callings are really important to why we live the life, how this life was created for us, and things we need to accomplish. And that calling has that entrepreneurial element all wrapped up inside of it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm realizing the title of this session is my studio flying high or falling behind? So did we answer that question? We're saying that we have this plan. We've identified these seasons here, and not everyone always has to be mature, but there are ideal places that you can look forward to. You can say, I'm weak in this area, but because I'm in this season, I know that I need to master this ingredient next.
Yeah, if you know that you're being held back and haven't figured out how to take on sales and finance, are you holding yourself back? And are there some easy things you can put in place to get to the next season? I think that's always a great question to ask yourself. And honestly, I think that RevCommunity does such a great job in that conversation and the support with one another to have that conversation. I see and read people asking each other these questions all the time and understanding how elements work, and the community is able to give you a clear assessment of where you're going, where your struggles might be. But also we have plenty of material online too. We have, hundreds of podcasts now and documents of every kind. And if you don't know where to find them, Connor can help you find them in RevCommunity, or Emmett or you and I can easily sit down with somebody and just walk them through some of what's needed to get them unstuck.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's a great summary. And we do have plenty of replays, plenty of resources available. The website is always available for articles and learnings and things like that. But tap into the community. I've really enjoyed reading the boots on the ground questions that people work through on a regular basis, from pricing to hiring and operations type decisions, or big picture, like why am I doing this? What am I doing here?
Yeah, it's one of the greatest things that we have going on is the community and that conversation that takes place. We learn, you learn. If you're not part of it, please join. It's community.revthink.com is the best place to find it, and just enjoy getting into it and learning from one another.
Great. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I'll turn the screen share off.
Yeah. Thanks, Emmett. Thanks for joining me this week. I think Joel is going to be back next week. You're going to be missing me after this.
I think so. maybe I'll be missing you, or you'll be missing me.
Yeah, maybe one of the two. Well, thanks for your help for the last few weeks. So Joel was traveling. I appreciate you doing that.
Of course.
And for those of you who tune in, we've said it already today, but we want you to know that we really do exist for you to thrive in your business and in your life and your career. If there's anything we can do to help, please reach out to us. We're here to serve, and we actually enjoy it. So there's nothing you can bring that we can't kind of process with you. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Emmett.